Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. We just finished talking about the Jimmy Butler trade. Now, I did get a couple things wrong because this is a developing story. It has gone from a 2-team to a 3-team to now a 5-team trade as Dennis Schroeder heads to Utah and Kyle Anderson heads to Toronto as a part of this trade. This now includes the Detroit Pistons, the Utah Jazz, and, of course, the Toronto Raptors, and of course the Miami Heat and the Golden State Warriors. That is a massive trade. The most amount of teams I have seen in a trade, potentially in NBA history. A 5-team trade is insane. It's hard to imagine all the workings, and there's no reason why a 5-team trade would be easy to get done. We'll see the full details, and I will continue to update you as our show goes on. But in this segment, we have to get to our NBA power rankings. Before we do that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, February 5th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the NBA power rankings here. Power rankings, as always, every Wednesday. We'll start here at number 30. It's the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are the worst teams in the NBA. The Wizards, no doubt about it, worst team. Now, they have won two games in a row, looking to make it 3 tonight against the Brooklyn Nets, but still a team that's in the middle of selling off all its best and most valuable pieces, at least some of those on the expiring contracts, and those that are a little bit older. The Wizards are not going to be very good this season. They still haven't cracked 10 wins, and they're tanking for Cooper Flag right now. At number 29, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. I like this Pelicans team in theory, on paper, but injuries have wrecked this team. Everybody not being healthy, everybody not being what they were supposed to be at the end of last season, at the beginning of this season. It's just been a mess over there for the Pelicans. They lost a couple of key guys in free agency, and it's really showed. Maybe if they can be healthy next year, they'll be able to make a bit of a run, but for now, they'll go get a quality piece in this year's draft. At 28, we got the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets have now lost 3 of 3 games against the Washington Wizards. A full third of the Wizards' wins this season have come against the Charlotte Hornets. Now, that is not a good stat. I understand they're dealing with some injuries, and this Charlotte team already wasn't very good as is, but you can't be losing to the Wizards 3 straight times this season for a team that has only won 9 games. It's not a good look. At 27, we have the Utah Jazz. I like this Utah Jazz, what they're building a little bit. They've got a couple of guys that I think would be really good if they were able to get that number 1 star, but they're nowhere close to that. For now, they're just kind of playing bad basketball. They've been really bad at turnovers, maybe the worst in NBA history at what they've been able to do. The Utah Jazz need to clean it up, and then they'll be just immediately better if they can stop turning the ball over. At 26, we have those Brooklyn Nets. This is a team that was doing really good at the beginning of the season. They were trying to tank. They traded for their own picks back, and they've kind of fallen back down to where they wanted to be. This is a Brooklyn Nets team that desperately needed to be bad after literally having a fire sale, getting a lot of picks from the Knicks, getting rid of all of their top guys. This is a bad team. The Brooklyn Nets here at 26. At 25, we have the Toronto Raptors, part of that now 5-team deal that just came out involving Jimmy Butler. The Toronto Raptors, again, injuries, players underperforming or overperforming last season, however you want to look at it, just have not lived up to expectations. They were a team that I thought might be able to make maybe a play-in run in the Eastern Conference. Instead, they're down here in the basement dwellers. At 24, we have the Chicago Bulls. They've made some trades. They've finally started shipping off some of those pieces. I'd like to see them continue to make some moves, maybe move some more guys if they can. But for now, this is a team that's going to win a few more games than I think their fans would want them to, especially in the spot they're in. Of course, it's never a bad thing to win games, but The Chicago Bulls kind of need a deep reset, and they're not getting that with how they're playing right now. At 23, we have the Orlando Magic. Injuries, injuries, injuries. That is the story of this season. I like this Magic team a lot. They just can't get it together without some of their guys on the court. They need to get them back. They need to be fully healthy. And until then, they're just going to keep falling in these rankings. At number 22, we have the 76ers. Injuries have been a big story this season, but they've started to get a little bit healthier, right? We finally saw Joel Embiid come out last time against the Dallas Mavericks. They went out there, won a close game. They're starting to get all of their guys back. And if they can get everyone back, and crucially, if they can get everybody back healthy for the playoffs, they can go on a bit of a run here, especially in a weak Eastern Conference. They might be able to get a top 4 seed. At 21, we have the Trailblazers. Don't look now. The Blazers have been incredibly hot. They've won 8 of their last 9 games. Their young guys are starting to show up. Deni Avdija, who they got in a trade from the Wizards this offseason, has played amazing basketball. He really has. He's been huge for this team. The Portland Trailblazers might be ready a little quicker than a lot of people thought. Not this season, but they might be ready in the next 2 years or so to make a run in the West. At 20, we have the Atlanta Hawks. Injuries, again, have hurt this team. Trae Young's been playing amazing basketball, leads the league in assists. He does this every year. He's an amazing basketball player, does not get enough credit. He was a big all-star snub, but the Atlanta Hawks just aren't good enough of a team to really get that kind of recognition that Trae Young deserves. At 19, we have the Spurs, a massive trade for them to go out and get De'Aaron Fox. I want to see a little bit more of a sample size before I make any sweeping statements about how this team is going to be. But on paper, I love the way that these two are going to work off each other. It's going to be a lot of fun to see a guard like Fox play with just an athlete like Victor Wembanyama. At 18, we have the Pistons. Kind of a massive, maybe the biggest year-to-year improvement that I've seen in a very long time. Cade Cunningham makes an all-star game. He still doesn't have a lot of help around him. If they can get him help, especially with the way that they were able to improve this season with just the addition of Tobias Harris, this is a team that could be really dangerous for a long time. At 17, we have the Warriors, and honestly, we might have to move them up a little bit. Again, this list was made an hour or two ago, so it was not fully updated for the Jimmy Butler trade. Honestly, I'd probably move them up to about spot 14 with that Jimmy Butler trade. I really like that addition for them. That's going to be a really good spot, a really good duo with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. I like the way their games play together, and I'm excited to see what he can do when he gets to the Bay Area. At 16, we have the Phoenix Suns. They're probably going to stand pat here at the trade deadline, at least with their 3 big stars, and that's not what a lot of Phoenix fans wanted to hear. A lot of them were expecting to get some Jimmy Butler news down the pipeline. Instead, they're just there sitting with what they got, which what they got isn't bad, right? This is not a bad necessarily team, right? They just have a lot of holes. Commando's striker says, didn't Steph and Kerr voice their concern that Jimmy is not a fit for this team? Potentially they did. I think that might be because of all the off-the-court stuff. I really do like the way that, in theory, these two guys could play off each other. Steph Curry is a guy that can control the possession. We talked a lot about this in the last segment. Steph Curry is a guy that can control the possession with and without the ball. Jimmy Butler doesn't need the ball in his hands at all time to be effective, and Jimmy Butler's ability to take over in the playoffs, I think, is going to be huge, especially with the fact that Steph is such a great creator. I think he can play with just about anybody. That's a really rare specimen, a really rare archetype that Steph Curry has, and because of that, I think he can play with anyone, and adding a guy like Jimmy Butler is going to be huge for them. And I think that's why the Warriors had the dynasty like they did, because Steph can play with anybody. But at number 15, we have the Dallas Mavericks. I didn't punish them too much for that Luka trade. Obviously, the future, it's not looking good, right? This shortened their timeline from a window of about 10 years to a window of about 5 years, if we're being generous right now, right? But just for this season, having that trio of Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, and Kyrie Irving is going to be pretty good. I really do like the way that especially Kyrie and Anthony Davis can play off each other. Anthony Davis said he was a lot more comfortable playing that 4 position, and I think him being able to be a 4 over there is going to do a lot for their defense. Maybe not for their offense, although Luka was hurt for a while, so it shouldn't affect it for a team that already was pretty effective offensively. I think this team could be dangerous in the West this season, but I don't like the way that this team is built for the future now. Of course, I still don't think that was a good trade, but I do think in the right now, if we're looking at the Mavericks, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. At 14, we have the Heat. Obviously, Jimmy Butler no longer a member of the Heat there. Tyler Hero has really stepped up, played good minutes. They obviously have those young guys that continue to step up every single year. They just got a haul for Jimmy Butler, and I think this team is going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs in the East like they always are. They're always going to be a tough out. They always play good basketball, and it's going to be a fun postseason, a fun down-the-season stretch for the Heat as they move past the Jimmy Butler era. At 13, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. They made a trade of their own. I don't think it's really going to affect them too much. A lateral move. Kyle Kuzma has always showed up whenever he gets traded. He always changes scenery, always tends to do him well, and I think it's going to do the same thing in Milwaukee. To the extent that I think they'll be a contender, no, I don't think that. But I do think that the fact that they were able to get a guy that can be just a firecracker, can catch fire at any point, can just drop 30 to 40 points in any given night is going to be huge, especially if you can get a tick back up for his shooting numbers that have been the worst in his career this year. At 12, we've got the Kings. They've made a bunch of moves, right? But I think they're still playing good basketball. They got Jonas Valanciunas on the inside. They've got a lot of guys that can play together pretty well. We've seen DeMar DeRozan play with Zach LaVine before. That was a pretty good combo. Throwing a guy like Domantas Sabonis in there, you're just taking the onus out of the guards and onto the forwards instead. So you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit up top, but you've still got a lot of really good shooters on this team, and I think they'll be kind of the same this season at least. Now, I'd like to see him make a couple more moves potentially, sign some, go with somebody else in free agency in the trade deadline, as they still have a little bit more time and a little bit more resources. But if they stand pat, I think they'll be pretty much the same as they were without De'Aaron Fox. At 11, we have the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards continues to play great basketball. This is a team that's not going to compete for a championship this season, but Anthony Edwards has continued to develop his shot, and he's going to be great for a very, very long time. At 10, we have the Clippers. They have survived, and they've continued to just win basketball games, right? I've been very impressed by the Clippers this season. They were a team that I thought was going to be in the lottery, but instead they're fighting for a top 4 seed in the West, and if they can keep this up, they're going to be a team, especially with that new arena, that's going to be very dangerous and not fun to deal with as we head into the playoffs. At 9, we've got the Indiana Pacers. They've turned it on, right? They go as Tyrese Halliburton goes, and he's started to turn it on down the stretch. He always is a bit of an up and down kind of player, but when he's on, the rest of this team seems to catch fire with him, and that's a very dangerous team. They obviously made a deep run in the playoffs last year. There's no reason to think they can't do it again. At 8, we've got the Lakers. Got to give them a bit of a boost here, adding Luka Doncic. You've still got questions at the center position, right? You don't want Jackson Hayes being your go-to center day in and day out for the rest of the season and for the playoffs. Maybe they can go get a guy from the Knicks. Maybe they can go get a guy from the Blazers at the center position. They need to make a move soon, because that's one of those that I think they need to make if they want to get the most out of that Luka-LeBron combo for now. At number 7, I've got the Denver Nuggets. Nikola Jokic is amazing, right? He's going to continue to keep his team in the top echelon of the league because he's so good at basketball. The best player in the world, the best player in the sport. He's a guy that is perennially an MVP candidate, and he deserves to be up there. He's keeping the Nuggets at number 7. At 6, we've got the Houston Rockets. They've started to slip a little bit. They're a young team. They'll be just fine. I'm not worried about this Rockets team. I don't think this is their year to win a championship, but I do think that the Rockets are going to are still going to finish out the season strong. At 5, I've got the Knicks. This is a team that I'm a little worried about come playoff time, just because it's Tibbs, just because the way that Tibbs coaches teams, they seem to run out of gas down the stretch of the season because he leans so heavily on his starters. This is a really good team. You've got scorers up and down that bench. They're getting a center back. They're getting a Mitchell Robinson, who's going to be a huge get for them at center, especially defensively. But I love the way that this team plays, and they're in the top 5. At 4, we've got the Grizzlies. I love this team. I really do. I think they're true title contenders, especially when they're completely healthy. When John Morant is out there and he's playing his best ball, this is a very, very dangerous team. You've got Jaren Jackson Jr. who made the All-Star game. You've got a couple of Defensive Player of the Year award winners on that roster as well in Marcus Smart. This is a really good team, and the Grizzlies deserve a little bit more respect. At 3, we've got the Celtics. I know they just beat the Cavs last night, but they're still figuring out. They haven't really played their best basketball. They were slipping a little bit as of late. They've started to turn it around, but this team is very scary. They haven't played their best basketball yet, and they're very comfortably second in the East. At number 2, it is those Cavs. I'm a little worried that they're going to come crashing back down to earth, but I still believe in this team. This is a team that's flush with stars, flush with talent, as long as they can continue to play the way that they were playing at the beginning of the season. Maybe not to the extent that they were on historical pace, winning games and stuff, but I need this team to get back and figure out their little issues. They're still really good. They're still one of the best teams in the NBA. They haven't even lost 10 games yet, and we're getting over the 55-game mark at this point. But this is a Cavs team that needs to get back to their best basketball again. And of course, at number 1, that leaves the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder, of course, are the best team in basketball. Who would have guessed that the Oklahoma City Thunder would be the best in basketball, right? They've got stars up and down. They've got the MVP frontrunner in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There is not a lot bad you can say about this team. They're not even fully healthy right now. This team is going to dominate. They're going to be a tough out, and I don't know if they're a lock to win the NBA championship, but the way that this team is playing, it's going to be real tough for any team to beat them. But let me know what your thoughts are. We'll run through the top 10 real quick. At number 10, we've got the Clippers, 9 the Pacers, 8 the Lakers, 7 the Nuggets, 6 the Rockets, 5 the Knicks, 4 the Grizzlies, 3 the Celtics, 2 the Cavs, and 1 the Oklahoma City Thunder. Love to hear your thoughts on this list. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the NFL. The Super Bowl is this week. You might be surprised about that due to all the massive trades and the fact that the NBA has kind of taken over. But the Super Bowl is this week. I want to talk about Mahomes and Brady. Tom Brady, obviously, as it stands right now, the best quarterback in NFL history. How much does that change if the Chiefs win this Super Bowl? We'll talk about stats and everything around that coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.